Good afternoon, or should I say good evening. Uh, I'm Frank Aquila. I'm chairman of the Board of Trustees, and I want to welcome all of you here. It's a quite distinguished group. Our faculty, our staff, many alums in the audience, some of whom I haven't seen in a few years, and of course, Les Fagen and his family, and Alice Ristroff and her family, including her three very adorable children. But I really want to thank you all for coming. This is a joyous event. It's a joyous event on many different levels. I'm going to talk about Alice when we do the actual investiture, but I just wanted to say a little bit about Les. As some of you, maybe all of you know, Les is not a Brooklyn Law School alum. He was born in Brooklyn, as many of us were, and went off first to Yale and then to Columbia Law School, which I've heard rumors that they have a decent law school there. And his illustrious career started by clerking for really one of the lions of the federal judiciary, Judge Jack Weinstein, who I'm sure most of you know of. And then he went on to a long and extraordinarily successful career at Paul Weiss, where, among other things, he was the chair of their litigation department. And although Paul Weiss has expanded into the corporate side of things these days, for many years, certainly when I was a law student, Paul Weiss was considered really the preeminent litigation firm in the city. And of the big established firms, certainly the one that you would look to for a big litigation. So the question comes, why does Les want to endow a chair at Brooklyn Law School? So first of all, you should know that, and many of you do, that he has been an adjunct professor here at Brooklyn for 20 some odd years. And that's an enormous contribution. I think we all recognize that the adjunct faculty contribute so much because they're by and large working lawyers, and they can provide some of the practical aspects. And although adjuncts get paid, the reality is it's really a stipend. So it really is very much of a contribution, and 20 plus years of that really is a significant contribution to us. But why Les has decided to endow a professorship here at Brooklyn Law School is because of a reason that I hear from some of you in the audience, but many of our alums. And that is that Brooklyn Law School changed the trajectory of their family. And Les's father was an alum. Do you remember what year?
42.
1942. I know of some alums where their father or mother and grandfather, I think the valedictorian at graduation a few years ago was a third generation Brooklyn Law School alum. But the reason that so many people, I think, say that Brooklyn Law School has changed the trajectory of their family is because of the history of the law school, having women, people of color, a variety of religions, from the very first class. You look at the pictures of the early classes, and you see how Brooklyn Law School has always been such a change agent for so many, and has allowed many, many people who could not have otherwise gone to law school, in some cases because the law schools just wouldn't let them in, even if they had the money. But this really is the legacy of the law school. And Les, we really thank you for your generosity, and you're in effect paying it forward to us. So thank you. And again, welcome to everyone.
Thank you so much, Frank, and welcome. I am so pleased that all of you can be here with us today, and it really is thrilling to look out and see this full house here for this very special occasion. This is a special occasion for several reasons, because simultaneously we celebrate three different qualities that help to define Brooklyn Law School and what makes it so special. Of course, by investing Alice Ristroff as the Les Fagen Professor of Law, we celebrate a path-breaking scholar and a dedicated teacher who exemplifies the excellence of our remarkable faculty. We also honor, at the same time, our proud and distinctive mission of access, as Frank has mentioned, and the transformative power of a Brooklyn Law School education, exemplified by Herman Fagen of the class of 1942, whose legacy helped to inspire this gift of this professorship, and as well as Herman's brothers, Bernard and Israel Fagen, of the classes of 1930 and 1931. And finally, we celebrate the impact of philanthropy in advancing that mission through the generosity and vision of Les Fagen, Herman's son and a longtime member of our adjunct faculty in creating this professorship. Let me begin and just say another word about the mission, because it's why we are all here and gathered in this building. Founded in 1901, Brooklyn Law School, as Frank has mentioned, was founded on the mission to generate knowledge and opportunity for legions of talented students who were then mostly excluded from places of power and privilege. For our earliest decades, our student body was comprised mostly of immigrants, first-generation Americans and professionals. And they came from every corner of the globe, men and women of every race, faith, and background, all bound together by a common ambition to make a difference in the fortunes of their families and in the broader society. That remains central to our mission today. Les's father, Herman, and his brothers personify that Brooklyn Law School story. Born to immigrants, Herman grew up during the Great Depression and put himself through law school here at night, working hard-scrabble jobs during the day as an iron worker, driving trucks. And afterward, he served his country in the Second World War and prospered as a lawyer and an executive with the New York City Transit Authority. And he prepared his children, Les and Susan Britt, who also joins us here this evening, for exceptional success in their own careers, both as trial lawyers. It was partly that transformative impact on the Fagen family, of course, that inspired the philanthropy we celebrate tonight. First, many years ago, in the creation by Herman himself of an endowed scholarship that has enabled other talented students in generations since to follow in his footsteps to Brooklyn Law School, and now in the enormously generous gift by his son Les to endow this professorship, a professorship that honors the legacy of his father and also Les's respect for his colleagues on our faculty. The faculty are the lifeblood of any institution of higher education, and the success of any university or law school rests first and foremost on their shoulders. It is their passion and creativity in the classroom that shapes and inspires our students. It is their leadership and service that betters our community and the world beyond our own campus, and their scholarship that brings insight to public debates and lifts our national reputation. Although his path took him to Columbia Law School, as you heard, Les Fagen is very much one of our own. A renowned trial lawyer, as you have heard, and a leader at Paul Weiss for more than 40 years. He is also a longtime member of our adjunct faculty and has taught and mentored countless Brooklyn Law School students through many years, teaching a course in IP litigation and developing an abiding respect for friends and colleagues on our faculty. I am enormously grateful that Les shares this understanding of the central importance of faculty excellence to legal education, and that he has chosen to advance that vision by endowing the Les Fagen Professorship. Faculty chairs honor ambition and exceptional achievement by our faculty and help us to recruit and to retain the very best teacher scholars in the always hyper-competitive environment of higher education. Les's visionary gift will serve Brooklyn Law School in perpetuity by enabling the school to recognize and support the contributions of high-performing faculty for all time forward. Tonight, we are privileged to celebrate the initial impact of this gift in the investiture of the inaugural Les Fagen Professor of Law, Alice Ristroff. We are extremely fortunate at Brooklyn Law School to have a faculty of great ambition and impact. Indeed, the most prominent national study of scholarly impact, which was just released a few weeks ago, found that ranked Brooklyn Law School's faculty 29th in the nation in terms of impact in the broader world, as measured by citations of their scholarship. Alice Ristroff exemplifies that excellence through her work as a path-breaking scholar of constitutional and criminal law and a gifted teacher and mentor to our students. We were very fortunate to recruit Alice to join our faculty in 2017 after having already established herself as a star nationally on the faculties of the University of Utah and Seton Hall Law Schools. Here at Brooklyn Law School, she has continued to rise to even greater national prominence as a scholar and established herself as a deeply respected leader within our faculty. We are privileged to be joined tonight by Alice's family, her partner, Jamil Jaffer, a distinguished professor of constitutional law and First Amendment in his own right at Columbia Law School, and their children, their son Zeki, and their daughters Layla and Salim. We are grateful also to be able to celebrate Alice's achievements tonight and to join in thanking Les for his generous and hugely important support of everything that is special about Brooklyn Law School. And with that, it is now my great privilege to invite Les to share a few words.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Frank and David. Thank you for saying wonderful things about me. You left out a couple of great achievements, but that's okay. It's okay, I can deal with that. Delighted to be with all of you. It was a wonderful event. And I am just thrilled with Alice. She's terrific. And you know, in the process of giving a donation to create a professorship, the donor has to stay away from being involved. And I was utterly involved, truly. But look what happened. Alice worked for me at Paul Weiss 20 years ago. And she was terrific. And I got a lot of credit because of all she did. My family's here, as you've heard. Sister, I don't know if my niece made it on time. Oh, there you are. Got my niece's husband, a great niece back there. And my dear Barbara, and her team, lovable, truly. There are lawyers in each group. And as David said, my sister is a great trial lawyer. Better than me. Not really. Don't throw anything at me. Yes, I have been asked to discuss why I did this, why I made this contribution. Well, there are two reasons you've kind of heard. My long-standing connection with this wonderful school, and second, my connection with my dad, class of '42. As for Brooklyn Law School, as you've heard, I've been an adjunct professor here for a long time. I've known the hallways, the elevators, the professors, the students, powerfully impressive. And because of that, I have gotten to know the remarkable history of this institution. It's 123 years old. It has produced thousands and thousands of lawyers who've made an important contribution to the law and the practice of law. The alumni list is extraordinary. Senators and judges, a list too long to name. A mayor, not indicted. Politicians like Leonard Garment, who advised two American presidents. War heroes like Mickey Marcus, who parachuted into Normandy on D-Day, and then for the US organized the Nuremberg trials. Successful businessmen like Larry Silverstein, who has rebuilt the World Trade Center. Even musicians, Paul Simon of Simon and Garfunkel, who left this school after one semester. And some kind of bad guys like Bernie Madoff, jailed for the largest Ponzi scheme in American history. What law school could match that? He left the law after 1 year, and it's a pity he didn't get the chance to get courses on crime and securities. That might have made a change, I don't know. Second point, my dad. Brilliant. All his, you'll forgive me, this is tough. He was very proud of graduating from this law school. Memorable stories that I still remember. And he wore his Brooklyn Law School ring until the very end. Now, Dad was a child of the Great Depression, and money was really important and tough. He may be listening. And I have this feeling he may say less. I already paid my tuition to these people. Why? What are you doing here? Well, I hope he listens. Brooklyn Law School did amazing public relations about my contribution and me. I don't know how that happened. I even read in Chinese newspapers that this was published. And as you've heard, and as happened in these press statements, it indicated where I was in college and where I was in law school. It's funny and amazing. Almost immediately, I received communications from the fundraisers of my college and law school. How about us? Oh my God. I began to feel guilty. What about my alma maters? I mean, that's an important phrase. That led me, for God knows what reason, to research the origin of that famous phrase, alma mater. What does it really mean? Well, the phrase is ancient. It's Latin. The translation weirdly says nothing about schools and college or law schools. It actually says it addresses to mothers and goddesses, offering, and I quote, as translated, bountiful or nourishing. Well, from my experience here, and for Dad, surely I have gotten bountiful and nourishing things. So really, I think this school is my alma mater, and always will be. Thank you.
Well, I've just learned one lesson. You never want to speak after Les Fagen. So now we get to the important part of the program. And in thinking about this, one of the things that I thought about is that usually when someone has an honor or an award bestowed upon them, it's really about what they've done before, and obviously being named an endowed professor is about everything that Alice has done before, which Dave Meyer has talked about. Her scholarship, not just here, but at Utah and Seton Hall. Her leadership role that she's taken within Brooklyn Law School, really since she started here. Alice has been a presence from day one. But, having a named professorship is really not just about what you've done before. It really is a testimony of the faith of the institution as to what you're going to do in the future. So in that way, this is very different from other awards and honors that people get. And I think it makes it an extraordinarily important one because of the promise that we all see. And it's hard to say, the promise, like, okay, you're going to do good things in the future, because you've already done tremendous things. But we believe that, in fact, Alice, you will do much, much more in the course of your academic and your legal career. And so that's really why you're receiving this professorship. And not just because you're an associate at Paul Weiss. I'm sure you're a very good associate, but it's not for that. It really is for your academic prowess and promise. So. It's not your portrait. You're going to have to wait a few more years for that. So, on behalf of the Board of Trustees and Brooklyn Law School, I'm proud to, and I'm reading basically what's here, appoint Alice Ristroff, the Les Fagen Professor of Law, and obviously the inaugural Professor, Les Fagen Professor of Law. And as I say, I'm reading what's on here. The recipient of this honor, Alice, is hereby recognized for her outstanding contributions to teaching and research in the field of law, her distinguished reputation as a nationally renowned expert in criminal law and procedure — Bernie Madoff could have used her — constitutional law, and the political theory thereof, further merits her investiture as the Les Fagen Professor of Law, which signifies the highest standard of excellence in academic research. So with that, I present to you the new Les Fagen Professor of Law.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Les. Thanks to all of you for being here. When I joined this faculty just over 7 years ago, I knew right away that I had made the right decision because I found myself grinning like a fool every time I passed through the courtyard and approached the front doors. And several years later, I still smile at my good fortune. This very afternoon, I had an extra reason to smile in the courtyard when who should be there but Les Fagen. First time we saw each other in about 20 years, but a great honor to see you tonight and a great honor to receive this chair tonight. I am grateful to all of you. I am privileged to be part of a very special community in my professional life, and also privileged to have a loving and supportive family, which is who are here tonight, as you've heard. I want to thank Jamil Jaffer, my partner, who is my most critical reader, and our children, Zeki, Layla, and Salim. Thanks to all of you for being here. And on this evening of gratitude and joy, I heard Dave say that it's a joyous, celebratory occasion. Dave has made the questionable choice to ask me to say something about my scholarship, which is not celebratory or joyful. I teach criminal law and criminal procedure and constitutional law, and my scholarship in those areas has been focused primarily around the topic of violence, which again is not something particularly celebratory or joyful. So I'm going to say a few things about it, but I want to say this preliminary point. I think that my scholarship, even writing about violence, is actually motivated by a deep hope, a hope that if we as scholars figure out better what it is that we are actually doing, if we gain a better understanding of our own practices, we may collectively put ourselves in a position to improve them or escape them and achieve a future that is better than our present. I do think much scholarship is motivated by a hope like that, and I do think that in choosing to fund scholarship, you are supporting that aspiration and that hope. I wrote something about hope once, actually. I was reviewing my prior work, trying to find something appropriately celebratory for this evening, and I found an essay. It's about 10 or 15 years old, an essay about hope, but also about violence, an essay about Graham versus Florida, a decision by the Supreme Court in 2010 about the Eighth Amendment and life without parole sentences for when imposed on defendants who committed their crimes as juveniles. The court found in that case that a life without parole sentence for a defendant who had committed a non-homicide crime as a juvenile. In those particular circumstances, a mandatory life without parole sentence was unconstitutional, the court found. And it found that such a sentence was a denial of hope. The reason for the finding that this particular punishment practice was unconstitutional was, the court reasoned, to take someone who's a teenager, someone just on the cusp of adulthood, even if that person has done something very terrible, to take that person and to imprison them for the duration of their life, with the message at the outset that you will never leave this place. That the court found was a denial of hope so profound as to be cruel and thus in violation of our Eighth Amendment ban on cruel and unusual punishment. So I was looking at that piece again and struck by, for an essay about hope, it was really pessimistic. I was pessimistic in that essay because the Supreme Court's decision did not actually bar life imprisonment sentences for defendants of any age. It merely said that over the course of such a sentence for this particular class of defendants, the defendant had to have access to some meaningful opportunity for review, a meaningful reconsideration of the the sentence that had been imposed. And so, in thinking about that conclusion, I was again pessimistic in 2010 because I wasn't sure that the Supreme Court's determination would, in fact, change the imprisonment practices. Our imprisonment practices very much. And it was the imprisonment practice that I focused on because as a scholar, I've been focused on practices of violence, as I said. But in thinking about that essay today and thinking about the court's directive that we need opportunities for meaningful review, that we can render these sentences of incarceration constitutional by providing or guaranteeing some opportunity for meaningful review, I was thinking about that today in the context of my scholarship, both past and scholarship to come. And I thought that there are ways in which I might think of the projects I have been pursuing as efforts to ensure periodic or continual, meaningful review of our practices that use physical force. I have applied that call for a more meaningful review to sentencing practices, including imprisonment and capital punishment, but also to many other practices within criminal law, including policing practices and police use of force. And again, much of the analysis is grim. Grim in part because the violence that I am thinking about, that I am urging a meaningful review, much of that violence is licit violence rather than illicit violence. We might think of the relationship between law and violence as one where violence is bad and law prohibits it, and law is a solution to problems of violence. But I've been interested in various forms of physical force that are, again, authorized, encouraged, sometimes even required by legal institutions. For many of these practices, there is, of course, some argument about whether they should, in fact, be called violence. And I haven't wanted to engage so much. I haven't really wanted to engage in a linguistic turf war, but I have wanted, again, to write scholarship that asks why we make the choices that we do when we choose to label something as violence or when we choose to avoid that word and use a different label. I think those choices are important because I think our background conceptions and understandings, sometimes implicit, sometimes explicit, about what counts as violent are deeply impactful. They affect the practices we engage in or the practices we expect our state officials to engage in. If we think of prison as itself violence, if we think of a stop and frisk as itself violent, that can affect, again, what we ask of the state officials who carry out these tasks. So as I think about where I might go next, now that I have the great honor of being the Les Fagen Professor, and I think about some new scholarly terrains, I have again been very focused on practices within the criminal legal system. I have already maybe kind of jumped the gun a little bit, but over this past summer began thinking about a slightly different terrain, not criminal law, but a terrain where we can think about conceptions of violence and tussle over those conceptions more directly. As Dave mentioned, in addition to teaching criminal law and criminal procedure, I teach constitutional law, and it's been a long time since I taught the First Amendment in particular, but I did used to teach it. I have begun some research on the work that conceptions of violence do in First Amendment terrain, where Again, the things that we say about violence are likely to have a tremendous impact on actual practices. An oversimplification, one might say, of the First Amendment on violence would be that it's okay to in many contexts, it's permissible to speak about violence, but not to speak advocating for violence. I'm interested in that distinction and how well we manage to maintain it. So it will be First Amendment doctrine that occupies my attention going forward, but still violence, I'm sorry to say. Violence, but violence, again, undergirded by a hope that with better understandings we might lessen this particular form of practice. I'm, again, tremendously honored to be here tonight. Thank you, Les. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Frank. I'm acutely aware that I stand between the closing remarks and the reception. And as a law professor, I could keep talking about scholarship for another 2 to 3 hours. I won't. I just want to, again, express my gratitude and appreciation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alice, for your inspiring remarks and for all that you do. And thank you, Les, for making all of this possible and for all of the impact this will have on Brooklyn Law School for generations to come. And in thanks to you and in honor of your father. So please, I invite all of you to join us downstairs. We have a reception waiting for you just straight down those stairs. So look forward to seeing you there. Thank you.